And I watched that. I said, boy, that's a suicide mission. I mean, talk about nuts. So that's why J.P. Morgan was fined almost $1 billion for selling silver they didn't own. And that's what's going on in the market. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I think the price of silver will go up is that game is about to end. They're going to catch them with their pants down. And the trouble with selling short silver is you've got to cover it. That means you've got to buy it back to pay it. And once they realize that people, there's nothing to, if you can't buy it back, that adds another layer to the bullish nature of silver. And one big reason I'm optimistic in silver is I own gold mines, I own gold coins. But the reason I buy what I call green boxes is silver eagles, U.S. silver eagles, and there's 500 each inside of them, is because when that dollar collapses, which I think it will, and they start printing, then I'm going to start using silver as spending money. Whereas I wouldn't do that with gold. It just takes, you can't go into a supermarket. It's like a $10,000 gold coin here. They won't take it. But silver is a little bit more walk around money, I call it. And so that's why I'm such a big, fat silver bull. So if they're called silver eagles, the silver, every country, not every mint produces them. They come in bars and coins and all this. So I don't recommend. I'm not an advisor, but we're not saying buy silver, but I definitely consider it. So Peter, what other reasons do you have for silver? Your bullishness on silver?
What if the world's cheapest asset today is secretly the fastest shortcut to becoming a millionaire? Robert Kiyosaki has been loading up on this exact asset since 1965, and he insists its biggest price explosion is happening right now. While the masses are distracted by stocks, real estate, and crypto, smart money is quietly moving into a market everyone else ignores. In this video, we reveal how exploding demand and zero supply are driving prices to historic levels. Watch until the end, because what Robert Kiyosaki and Peter Krauth expose next will completely change how you build wealth.
So, Robert, you mentioned earlier about how hard it is to find, and I can certainly confirm that. So, for your viewers, it's important, I think, to realize that only about 25% of silver that comes out of mines comes out of actual silver mines. The other 75% comes as a byproduct from mining other things like gold or copper or lead and zinc. So, here's what's interesting. If a miner that produces silver as a byproduct, not their main metal, is happy to get paid for the silver that they produce, that silver is really not that important to them. It's a small part of the revenue stream. Sometimes they hardly even report it. So they're happy to accept a high price for silver, but they don't go out of their way to try and produce more. And I think that's one of the big reasons that silver production, mined silver, has not kept up with the pace of demand. So the last time or the highest amount of silver ever mined was in 2016, and it was about 900 million ounces of silver that year. We have not ever, so that's 10 years ago, we have not ever matched that level. So imagine, silver demand has exploded. We have run deficits since 2020, and we're not producing more silver. So where's it going to come from? People have said to me, well, there's lots of silver that's owned privately, these private hoards, and if the price is high enough, it'll come to market. And perhaps, and to some extent, probably yes, but not at $40 or $50 or $60. It's going to have to be at much, much higher prices that some of that silver will start to come to market. And I'm not so sure how willing people will be to let go of that silver. So I don't operate on that assumption. I operate on the assumption that the market is going to remain very tight for many years. Just solar panels alone require 20% of the annual supply of silver. That one application is 20% of all of the silver produced every year. And with this war in Iran and oil prices having shot up, a couple of things have happened. We've seen lots of interest in things like EVs because people want to avoid, cars that have to consume gasoline. We've seen people turning to solar panels because their home heating oil has shot up in price. Anecdotally, there's the largest electricity provider in the UK. It's called Octopus Energy. They saw solar panel sales jump 50% in February and March. People are looking for alternatives. And I've said, with these much higher oil prices, you've got countries, large manufacturing companies looking for alternatives to much higher oil prices. Not only, does it wreak havoc on their planning when they have to suddenly pay much more for oil or not even be sure if they're going to get oil, but they look for alternatives right away. They want to make their supply chains more robust. It's very reminiscent of what happened during COVID. They want to make their supply chains more robust, so they're going to look at nearby sources of oil. They're going to look at alternatives for oil. So they're going to be willing to pay more for certainty. So they're going to lock in contracts that are going to span maybe 5 years, 10 years, be willing to pay more for the certainty of the energy. Guess what? That's inflationary. And here's an interesting point. This is from Ember Energy. They do some great research. And they said, here's an example. You have $100 million and you need to generate electricity. You can generate with natural gas 1.5 terawatts of energy. But guess what? It'll last you 1 year. If you spend that same $100 million on solar panels, you're also going to get 1.5 terawatts of energy, but for 25 years, because you're not burning it up. You're buying panels that produce that energy, and that's their lifespan, 20 to 30 years. So the math is pretty simple. And that's why I think even with higher silver prices and silver being a big part of solar panels, I don't see the demand for solar panels, suffering in terms of even with higher silver price environment.
And with the price of oil going up, I recommend everybody getting an EV.
That's true.
And I have oil wells. I sell oil, but
Right.
I still like EVs because I just plug it in. So the question is this: there's silver bulls and there's silver haters. So what are some of the complaints or the justification for silver haters hating silver?
Well, it's never going to go up. It's never going to go over 50. Now that it's over 50, it's soon going to go back below 50. People just, love to be pessimistic. I don't get it, but I can tell you that I've read a few times that there's financial or economic behavior research that says that people who are optimistic actually are more successful investors. So that's something to keep in mind. And you know what, Robert, as you have, and you've been very patient, but also on the right side of the trade, I bet, that the price you paid for some of your silver is almost insignificant compared to today's prices. I mean, it's barely a rounding error. It's been very profitable.